Every day's Casual Friday. That means Monday is Casual Monday. Tuesday, Casual Tuesday. Wednesday, Casual Hump Day. Thursday, Casual Thurs. That's what we call it. And Friday, Casual Shabbat. The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
It is Friday, December 2nd, 2022. My name is Sam Seder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Washington Bureau Chief for the Intercept, host of Counterpoints, Ryan Grimm will be joining us. Also on the program today, Congress votes to impose a deal on rail workers without any paid sick leave. Also on the program today, job numbers strong, despite the Fed's attempts to crush said job numbers. Nurses in Minnesota authorize a second strike, and a federal court orders Amazon managers to read its ruling outlining how Amazon can't breach worker rights. Supreme Court to hear the student debt forgiveness case. Warnock polling just ahead of Walker as we are 4 days out from the Senate runoff in Georgia. Recount ordered in Boebert Frisch election out in Colorado's 3rd district. Biden wants South Carolina to be the first primary instead of Iowa. Meanwhile, Donald Trump's special master is dumped in the Trump stolen document case. Biden claims to be open to conditioned negotiations with Vladimir Putin over his invasion of Ukraine. And Kanye has his free speech rights taken away by Elon Musk on Twitter.
The censor, I don't know. The censors become the censored.
Yes.
I can't figure out how to do it.
It's an authoritarian parfait on Twitter right now. All this and more on today's very, very casual Friday. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. It's Casual Friday. Emma, I see you're wearing a mock turtleneck.
I think this is just a turtleneck. This is not a mock neck. It goes like halfway up. What would it have to be
what's going
here?
on? Wait, Matt's
We
like
have a video computer problem. I'm going to try to fix.
Matt
right
is
now.
in a panic. So we can only hear Emma. Is that what's going on?
No, you just can't see the video computer.
We can't see the video computer. But Emma's there.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
All right. So there you go. You're there, and so folks can see.
Oh yeah. Okay, there we go. This is a turtleneck, Sam. I mean, this is.
It's not.
Yes, it is.
It's a mock turtleneck.
Well, when I ordered it like 4 years ago, it was called a turtleneck. So
They lied to you
Take
because
it
the
up.
turtleneck folds back over. I don't know if you've ever seen a turtle, but that is not what its neck looks like. A turtle's neck has layers of stuff, and it goes like this.
well, I'm glad I don't have a turtle's neck then.
Well,
That's
yeah,
good.
no, I mean,
I'm glad that I don't
no
have.
human wants an actual turtleneck. But, all right, well, there it is. It's Casual Friday, folks. We got a lot to talk to. We just got an IM from Vinny Holiday. Can you give some clarity on the AOC progressive vote strategy for the rail strike? See lots of progressives calling them stupid or foolish for voting to end the strike. Well, there was no actual strike yet, but it made it impossible for them to strike.
And
or
their ability to strike.
Virtually impossible for them to strike. But I also see takes outlining as it's the only strategy they can do. Can you lay out possible logic the progressives were using? We're going to be talking to Ryan Grimm about that. And maybe in the coming days, we'll have a more specific answer on that question. I mean, I think it's debatable. A lot of people saying mock turtleneck on the IMs, but
I
we're
see
not going to.
one person saying it. You know, I have access to the IMs
Lots of
too.
debates to be had today.
Yeah, I mean, this is the real marketplace of ideas here in the Majority Report studio.
Yeah. A lot of people saying McConnell neck sweater. so I
No.
don't know, cuts both ways.
More
the
people need to
bazaar
write
of
in.
ideas.
I mean, that's don't stop the count. Keep it going.
Either way, there's no doubt that the railway workers got screwed. And it is a combination of the existing Railway Labor Act that set this up for them to be screwed. It is also a function of the board that Biden assembled initially to come up with the initial proposals for the workers and the sort of the deal that ultimately was forced on them. And then I think it's, perfectly legitimate to argue against to debate the strategy by lawmakers who voted one way or another. And I think there's arguments on both sides. I mean, if it was me, I think I would have basically thrown it to the workers and said, it's up to you. You're going to be empowered one way or another, which would have been rejection of the deal. But we'll talk more about that with Ryan Grimm, those specifics there. Here is a roadway mechanic, guy named Reese Murtaugh, on with CNN's Caitlin Collins. The coverage of this railway strike has largely been just absolute garbage. And in terms of and to be expected, in terms of the mainstream media, they have, and part of it is a function of that deal that was forged by that board assembled by the White House. Because once that deal became the sort of compromise position, the absence of paid sick leave or the desire to fight for it became a bridge too far. And how can you risk the entire economy over this? But here is this, watch this segment.
You voted for President Biden, but now you say you feel like he's turned his back on you. Why?
Well, what we've seen with this great rail strike of 22 that has ended very undramatically is we've seen unionized workers' right to bargain collectively get trampled on. Their voice has not been heard. They voted against a contract. We have a pro-labor president who loves to, pat himself on the back for that. And when the going got tough, he turned his back on the people he's supposed to be looking out for.
And when this bill that is now going to go to President Biden pass the House, it had a separate measure that actually had 7 paid sick days for you and your colleagues. That did not make it through the Senate. They voted against it. Are you asking President Biden not to sign this bill?
It's a good question. You don't go against what your members vote for. So shout out to Jamal Brown for getting that bill going and looking out for us. But the sick days was more of a distraction. The main attraction here is Joe Biden forced a contract on our unionized workers who voted against it. And listen, we don't want to strike, but the only way we can get a fair contract is to strike. That's our only leverage. The rail carriers do not negotiate in good faith. The Railway Labor Act does not have time limits on these contracts we negotiate. So that can mean we can be negotiating a contract for 5 years. And we have no power to get a good contract. Our only leverage is to strike. And I feel like this whole process, the workers have kind of been demonized where it's like, y'all are trying to shut the economy down. We're not. We're out here working 14 hours a day in all weather conditions. Most of us work outside. We need some sick days. Why aren't you guys talking to the rail carriers? We're out here every day working, moving freight, making things happen. And when the leaders we vote in who are supposed to support us, turn their back on us, the system's broken.
I mean, that is the fundamental dynamic. And again, in this instance, paid sick days were a big part of that. But there's no leverage by the workers here. My understanding is the contract, and we'll talk more about this with Ryan Grimm, but the contract had been negotiated at least over 3 years. And there had been no pay raises. So when we say, they're going to get 25% pay raise over the next 5 years, understand they've gotten no pay raises for years and years and years. And so this is just a game of catch up. But of course, you see, their pay raise highlighted there, but without any context whatsoever. And we'll talk more to Ryan Grimm about this. But the bottom line is, they voted the deal down, and that vote was basically made completely irrelevant by this. Mm-hmm. There's no agency by the union workers. And, let's be clear too. I'm not convinced that there isn't a split between the union leadership and there obviously is insofar as that they accepted that deal and the union membership voted it down. But I wonder if there isn't even a greater split. Now, we'll talk to Ryan Grimm, because they're also, I think part of what we're also seeing is a organizing and a political campaign, a good one, I would say, to push Biden to take some executive action steps that would provide at least, some of these sick days. So in a moment, we're going to be talking to Ryan Grimm about all of those questions. But first, a couple of words from our sponsors. And we should say that guy, Murtaugh, is challenging the incumbent leadership.
Good.
In the union. Because in many respects, the union leadership, by approving that deal, made it that much harder to sink it. I think, and basically signaled to Biden, like, this is the deal that the union leadership is willing to accept. And we're going to the extent that we won't punish you electorally or in terms of support.
Biden didn't want any modifications. He said it would just slow things down. They were just terrified about those hundreds of trade groups coming to the White House and saying, we're scared of a shutdown, scared of a shutdown, scared of a shutdown. That's who they listened to.
Yeah, I mean, I think they were genuinely scared of a shutdown. I mean, I think, it would have become a very big story. There's no doubt they were afraid of a shutdown, but there could have been other things that they did, and we'll talk to Grimm about that. One of our sponsors today is Z-Biotics, and they are giving you 15% off with the code MAJORITY. And this is a product I now use on the reg. I mean, not too much. I don't want anybody to get a little bit concerned about the frequency in which I'm drinking, but it's also like, if I'm going to have a drink or two, and on those rare occasions where I have more, I'll drink some Z-Biotic before I go out. Why? Because Z-Biotics is a probiotic drink. What it does is it breaks down the byproduct of alcohol, which, contrary to what I thought, and maybe popular belief, it's not the dehydration. It is a toxin that's created in your gut. And Z-Biotic basically breaks it down before it gets developed from the alcohol. All you got to do, you drink a bottle of Z-Biotics before you have your first drink of alcohol. The Z-Biotics thing is a tiny thing like that. I don't know how much it is, actually, a couple of ounces, not even. You drink responsibly. You pace yourself. You get a good night's sleep. Doesn't matter if you go out and you're drinking multiple drinks or just one or two. And then all of a sudden, your next day, you're refreshed, you're ready to make the most of it. You don't have to worry about blowing off your workout session. You don't have to worry about coming in and forgetting your intro lines for the podcast you're doing that day. It's very helpful in that respect. Z-Biotics produces an enzyme like the one your liver uses. It breaks down the byproduct, like I say. It is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It's created by altering the DNA of a natural probiotic bacteria that we eat all the time. Z-Biotics is not vitamins. It is not plant extracts. There are no off-the-shelf ingredients. Z-Biotics has been rigorously tested and is FDA compliant for safety. Folks, if you're the type person likes to drink with friends or have one or two to unwind at the end of the day, and
That's
you still,
me.
there you go. And you still have a full day planned tomorrow, which is,
Not quite me.
not totally, always, but even if it's a half day, Z-Biotics is perfect for you. Whether you want your tomorrow to be a productive one, a fun one, or a relaxing one, don't let a few drinks the night before ruin it. I suspect I may be taking a little bit of that tonight.
Oh,
Yep,
fun times.
yep. Also, then I may even be going to a party tomorrow night.
Wow.
Yeah, and so that's a big deal for me.
It's a Z-Biotic weekend.
It's going to be a Z-Biotic weekend. And you can get 15% off your first order of Z-Biotics, pre-alcohol probiotic. Go to zbiotics.com/majority. Use the code majority. That's the letter Z, biotics.com/majority. Coupon code majority at checkout saves you 15%. Link is in the podcast and YouTube descriptions as always. And, this is a great gift. We got one more sponsor for today. This is a great gift. This is a great gift because it's a gift that both the giver and the getter of the gift, and then like third parties. I don't mean to sound so clinical about this, but it has value all around. Probably spending some time with some loved ones over the holiday. You're going to hear a lot of stories. Maybe not. Ones that maybe you've heard before, maybe ones that you haven't. But what Storyworth does is it helps your loved ones document those stories for them, for you, frankly, for your kids, for cousins. I mean, it's a great gift. Each week, Storyworth will email your loved one a life-related question that you pick from their collection. It can be simple things like, what's the bravest thing you ever done? What was your first car? Where did, where did you go on vacations as a kid? Did you like vacations? Whatever, it doesn't matter. And all they do is they reply with an answer to those questions, which end up like basically creating little stories. That's the way people's memories get jogged. And then after a year, Storyworth compiles everything into a hardcover book. You can also include pictures in this. The whole process, super simple. And it's something that like I always wanted to do on my own, could not get it together. This does the whole process for you. And it is, and trust me, you get to be my age and your folks get a little bit older, or maybe your grandparents. I would have loved this if it existed when my grandparents were alive. Get started with your loved ones for the holidays, and before you know it, you're both going to be cherishing these stories for generations to come. So check it out. Really a great gift. It is. You can help your family share their story this holiday season with Storyworth. Go to storyworth.com/majority today. Save $10 on your first purchase. That's STORYWORTH.com/majority to save $10 on your first purchase. Storyworth.com/majority. And as always, all of those things are going to be in the YouTube description. Do we have Ryan? Oh, we do? Okay. We're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we'll be talking to Ryan Grimm. And as always, don't forget, it's your support that makes this show possible. You can become a member at jointhemajority.com. Oh, yes, best ofs. Thank you. Folks, just a reminder, we're going to be doing best ofs at the end of the year, as we have for now 12 years running. Holy shit. And did we do that in the first year? How could we have possibly done it? The show started in October.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Oh, you know what it was? No, you weren't here.
Yeah, I wasn't. I got here in 2015.
Wow.
You were like in junior high at that time.
Whoa.
You know what it was? I think we did deep archive shows probably at that time. Like from when
From
Janine
Air
and I.
America, yeah.
But folks, we rely on your help for this. If there is an interview that you thought was, or a show that you thought was best of, send us an email at majorityreporters@gmail.com. Put in the subject line best of to indicate that you're referring to a best of. And you will help us pick what those best ofs are. All right, quick break. We'll be right back with Ryan Grimm. We are back. Sam Seder, Emma Vigeland on the Majority Report, joining us now. The Washington bureau chief of The Intercept, the co-host of Counterpoints, and author of
Books.
We've got
people.
We've got people. Ryan Grimm. Hello, Ryan. I'm a little thrown off because a lot of times you show up, you got a suit, but you really get into the casual Friday thing.
So I'll let you in on a secret. Last night we taped.
Hold on for 1 second. Whoa.
Yeah.
All right. Breaking news. Go ahead.
Ryan's filming a TikTok later. That's why he's
right.
in that
No,
outfit.
we taped Counterpoints late last night, so that because it was getting up. It's a Friday show.
Yeah.
Friday morning show, and we were getting it out to people who weren't premium subscribers at like 1 p.m. Like that's not okay for a morning show. Like 1 p.m. is not 1 p.m. is not morning. Okay, it's 10 a.m. in California. That's really stretching the definition. So we've pushed it to like late Thursday night. So you used to see me after I'd come fresh from the studio.
I see.
All made up with the tie and the coat. Now my Fridays are just
well, that's good. That's good for us. We got more opportunity to have you on the show. So that's
there
good.
you go.
All right. There's a couple of things I wanted to talk to you about this week that obviously in the news. The biggest at the moment is the rail strike, or the rail strike that never was. It's highly unlikely that they would strike at this point because there are legal sanctions against it. There are fines. I mean, it would be devastating for the workers to strike in this instance. So it's basically off the table. Give us from your perspective. I mean, obviously we've covered this. We know what happened. Walk us through this, how this process went, and let's flag where I want to say that, forgive me, things went off the rails.
Boo. So September-ish is when the rail carriers, the bosses, the companies started threatening and actually started beginning to lock workers out. If you remember, Amtrak started canceling service. And this is what bosses do when they think they have the upper hand in a coming strike against workers, that they say, look, you think you're going to strike? Well, we're going to lock you out. And then we're going to blame you when people can't take a train or when a shipment doesn't arrive. And by the way, because of the Railway Labor Act, for this 100-year-old piece of legislation, we're just going to have Congress impose a contract on you anyway. So don't even think about striking. And so Biden, heading into the midterms, certainly didn't want a railway strike. And so he got together a kind of interim negotiating team, and by all accounts, made the deal better from what it had been. He actually apparently bawled out the railway bosses over the whole sick day issue, because he's like, they're only asking for a couple. Some unions wanted 15, others just wanted to break the threshold of 0. And he's like, what is wrong with you people? He got one paid day off, well, like one extra paid personal day. There's vacation, etc. But that was like, and that was bizarrely a huge breakthrough because this was a red line for the companies. They're like, we do not want to give any of these because we have built such a brittle system, this precision system that has stripped manpower down to the bone, that if like a single person calls out, our whole national thing falls apart. So basically, the workers are trying to take that system on and take it apart.
And let me just
one
stop
day
you here.
doesn't do that.
Let me just stop you here because we also need to sort of like look at the history that led up to September. It involved the over the past like 3 or 4 years, the basically cutting the workforce by almost like, I guess, a third. And on top of that, and that was all part of this sort of like, it's part of almost like a just-in-time type of a theory behind this. They're gonna cut labor down to the bone. Instead of having multiple trains, they're going to make really, really long trains,
6-mile trains,
so that you don't need theoretically, you don't need as many people working on that train. But of course, you've now cut it. There's no redundancy whatsoever. So there's no room for anybody to be sick. It means that these workers have to work that much harder, that much longer, that much more pressure. They need to be available far more often. And so their working conditions are really shitty, is basically the bottom line. And then we get to September. They also had no contract for years, is my understanding, and no pay raises for years going into this. So what was it about September? Was this just the unions realized like, okay, we've got this midterm coming up. This is a good time to push it, or was there any type of statutory sort of threshold that was crossed that got Biden to like basically initiate, I guess, the Railway Labor Act?
Yeah, there was a statutory cool-off period that expired at around that time that actually the unions had set up, because the unions could kind of set up when they wanted it to expire. When it expires, then they can strike, and they felt that heading into a midterm, they might have the most leverage. It turned out, because Democrats were in power, they actually had less leverage.
Okay, so they set up this cooling off period is basically like almost like a handmaiden to a strike authorization.
Right.
It sounds like, and they set this up when? When did they first?
A couple years ago.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and then the carriers have been laughing at the workers since then. Like they're not negotiating in any good faith, because they're like, this cooling off period is going to come. There's going to be a showdown. We're going to take it to Congress, and you're going to get screwed. Like,
and
stop it with your
and was this like now new December deadline the unions helping Biden out and the Democrats generally, because it pushed it after the midterms?
Well, that was Biden helping himself out. So he came in and he brokers an agreement and then the Marty Walsh gets a few extra sweeteners in there, a little extra raise, like some other things that a lot of different unions want. That punts it past the election. Media moves on. Then the different unions vote on it. Eight of the 12 unions voted to approve it. 4 of the 12 rejected it. The 4, though, are among the biggest, and so in the aggregate, more workers ended up rejecting it than approving it. Though it was pretty close, and it was pretty close in the ones that rejected it and the ones that approved it. And so then it went to this December 9th cooling off period. That the cooling off period would allow workers to strike by December 9th. So at that point, that's when Biden re-intervenes and says, doesn't matter what the workers said, I'm forcing this agreement through. That's what brought us to Monday, with Pelosi saying we're voting on this week without changes.
Okay. And I want to make sure that we just get back to what variance or what ability Biden would have had to have created another, I guess, deal, as it were.
My understanding is that he could have put some sick days into the deal and sent it to Congress. that was a decision not to.
Well, in the article from maybe the Times this morning that I was reading, they did consider that, but he essentially said let's not amend the bill that would break the strike because that's just going to slow the process down and we can't afford this going past the 9th. So like that was an active decision by Biden to say what would have created a situation, and it wouldn't have passed the Senate most likely, was incorporating the sick days into one bill instead of breaking them up. But now we're in this nightmare situation for the workers because that was not included.
It's a risk, but it feels like a risk worth taking. So if you, let's say he puts 4 sick days in rather than 7, or let's say he puts in 7, it obviously passes the House. We know that. So then it goes over the Senate. We know it has 49 Democratic votes. If Manchin's vote is really needed, maybe you get that, maybe you don't. But then you have 49 Democrats. You have 6 Republicans who've said they're for it, so that, who voted for it. So that's 55. So now you need 5 Republicans to put it over the top. So you're in a position where Republicans have to choose between an economic meltdown starting on December 9th or giving 4 days, 5, 6, 7 days of sick leave to these workers. That puts them in a really difficult political situation.
I want to go more into the to the politics of this in a moment, but just like, since we're here, that to me just seems so obvious. Like, you completely reframe how this thing is being discussed. Like, at every turn, it seems like the framing of this has been disadvantaged. The workers have been disadvantaged in the framing of this because of the way that it has been rolled out. And it could have very well been, like, if you've got 5 or 6 Republicans, if you've got even got 3 who are going to vote for this, all of a sudden it becomes, the question becomes like, why aren't the rest of you?
Right.
Like, I mean, it becomes like some Republicans can do it. This isn't a bridge too far. You no longer have
Lindsey
this, like,
Graham can do it.
Yeah, this no longer is like a partisan, left-wing thing. It's, where it becomes, the pressure goes on the Republicans to do this. But let me ask you this. Why was why were, and you, I just want to go back because you said that these railway companies, and we should say there's 6 or 7, I guess, they have virtual monopolies, because it's regionalized and there's really no contesting this. These companies should be nationalized. There's absolutely no reason in my mind why we shouldn't we shouldn't own these things at all, frankly. But why were they so confident that Congress was going to vote to enforce a contract? A, and B, why were they so confident, which may be more relevant, why were they so confident that that contract would protect their really effed up system, which, let's be honest here, this is not only bad for the workers, this is why we've had, this has contributed to the inflationary pressure on our price. This really undermines our supply chain in this country.
I think history, they've basically always gotten, they've always gotten these pushed through Congress. Like, since 1923, there's never been allowed to be like an extended railway strike. Congress is just not standing for that, either party. So they're comfortable from that perspective. And I suspect they got some back channel assurances that the agreement, the tentative agreement that they had reached with Biden was going to be the one that he pushed forward. And that, like, Emma, like you said, that some people might have suggested, hey, why don't we make this a little bit better since we're going to jam this down their throat? That wasn't serious. And I think part of it is kind of ideological, and some of it's corporate capture, et cetera. But like some of it, I think Biden, Pelosi, Schumer, I think they look at this like precision system and this just-in-time stuff, and they're like, wow, that's pretty impressive stuff you
right.
rail lines are running. Like they're not just instinctually with the workers on this. They're like, hey, we got you a paid day off.
And they're also not with, like the concept of like having supply lines for, this isn't like they're eking out a living with these railway companies. There's a lot of profit there, and those billions of profit are essentially like, this is they are taking the externalities of things like people get sick or, trains break down. Because remember, a 6-mile train, if that breaks down, that's going to have a lot more impact on our supply lines, on the cost of goods, on this and that than, 5, mile and a quarter trains, essentially. But they do that to save their money, but they save money, they make profits, and consumers, workers, our society pays for it. We're like, this is like a classic externalize the cost, privatize the profits type of scenario.
Yeah, and the train companies are so good at setting it up as kind of workers against consumers and workers against the economy. But this was genuinely a case where you could make the argument that the workers and the consumers are on the same side here. Like, you need a couple more workers on these trains to keep everything running smoothly so that you don't have these supply chain problems that are driving the inflation that's pissing the consumers off. So you really could have built a coalition between the two here and say, hey, like these robber baron, these train CEOs really are contributing unnecessarily to supply chain driven inflation, and by forcing them to give more sick days, which means then probably hiring some people or developing a system that of substitutes. Like, maybe they could talk to schools about this, because like a school could be like, well, you don't get any sick days because look, if you don't show up, the kids don't get taught.
Right.
You're like, well, hold on a second. Let's think this through. Here's an idea. What if we have a list of people who could fill in?
And some redundancy in a company like this. I mean, could theoretically also be perceived as like, this is the cost of doing business. Like, we can't, and again, I'm also convinced that you follow this trail back. There are CEOs and people in the C-suite whose compensation is a function of maintaining these low labor costs, and that their stock options. I mean, just no doubt. This is also a very classic, Bill Lazonic story. That guy from UMass who has been telling this story for years, essentially, as to the agendas of the people in the C-suite versus the long-term interests of like the supply lines.
Right.
Well, let me ask you this. What kind of job did the unions do over the past year or so of setting this up in terms of like, this narrative of the supply lines that we have and the inflation that we're seeing? Part of it is a function of them inhibiting, in the way that they have structured this, which may be bad for workers, but it's also bad for consumers. Like, that seems to me a story that maybe the unions in preparation for this moment would have wanted to get out more.
I didn't see much of that, but you could certainly see a villainization campaign. Warren Buffett is maybe too many people like him or something, but he's the kingpin of these railroads. But so you could certainly see a campaign that would create villains around the supply chain issue, so that when it comes to a head, it's like this is the person that you're siding with, who's driving up your prices. By not allowing workers to come in sick. There wasn't much of that now, but there wasn't a whole lot of media attention on it in general. Right. So it's hard to blame them for not being able to craft a better narrative when basically they basically had no narrative crafting capacity at all.
So let's talk about the vote. So Biden decides he's going to ram through this bill. He could have theoretically increase the number of paid sick days in it from 1 to 4 or to 7 or 15 or whatever it is. Put that in. The staffing model that these railways had was too sacrosanct for Biden apparently to do this, and theoretically was worried that it wouldn't pass in the Senate, and then you'd have to go through this whole process again. And, at some serious cost to the economy. And we can debate about that because I think we're all in agreement that it would have put more pressure on the Republicans and somebody would have buckled. I mean, Mitch McConnell doesn't want to be presiding over a Senate that is responsible for the economy shutting down. I think it would have been a good thing to do, frankly. But what about the votes that we're taking? So Pelosi brings the bill that Biden wants her to bring to the floor. Sanders and progressives basically and Bowman push for this amendment to the bill, but it's not really an amendment because it doesn't amend the initial bill out of the House. It is done in a different way that allows it to be severed on the Senate side. Give me your take on there was, I guess, 8 Democrats who voted against it because
I think the severing of the bills gets a little too much attention because let's imagine that you didn't sever them and you sent a single bill over to the Senate that has all the sick days in. What the Senate would have done, as they demonstrated, is Bernie Sanders would have put a vote up on that. It would have failed, and then they would have kicked back by 80-15, which is what the vote was in the end, the tentative agreement without the sick days in it, back to the House. It would be on the House floor today. And
so they would have reintroduced a different bill that would have been in the ready. The same thing would have happened, essentially.
They would have had to vote on it today, and then today you could have speeches. So this would be the upside. Today you could have a bunch of speeches from everybody opposed to it in the squad, and whatever progressive caucus members want to take a no vote. It passed with 290 votes, so they don't really have the ability to tank it. So it would have passed basically today instead of yesterday. So that part to me was a little overblown, but maybe they should have demanded it for just their own
political reasons. I mean, because then you would have had the ability because it seems to me that progressives took the brunt of this thing because if it went to the scenario you just mentioned, right, where you didn't have this special sort of mechanism so that it was easily severable going to the Senate, and it did have to, and the Senate then initiated their own bill that came back to the House, progressives could have taken an easy vote. I'm going to vote no on this. It's still going to pass. It's going to pass by 70 votes anyways. So everybody in the squad could have voted against it. They could have had their sort of like performative moment. They would have voted against it. It still would have passed. What it forced, members of the squad and some to do is to vote for the bill so they could vote for the amendment to make sure that the second part of that actually passes so that it would get thrown to the Senate. And it seems to me from who made that decision? Like, where is that strictly a Pelosi decision? Or is that also a Jayapal strategy? Yeah,
that ends up being Jayapal and Bowman. So Bowman pushed. It was a union strategy too. If you look at the kind of BMWED Twitter account or the Teamsters Twitter account or the Smart Twitter account, these are the unions that kind of rejected the initiative. They were pushing for adding sick days to this, and so. Basically, you had Jayapal and Bowman agreeing, okay, we'll vote for this, if we get this other vote. Now, the rest of them, a lot of the rest of them could still have said, I'm not voting for this, and I'll still vote for the sick days. And publicly, politically, that's probably a better vote for them. Like, because then they don't have to be defending like why they voted for, to force this agreement on the unions. What makes it complicated is that the unions themselves are saying, we want to do yes on this and move it over to the Senate. But then what makes that complicated is like, well, who are the unions? What do we mean by the unions?
It does feel like there's a split between leadership and rank and file, because we saw that in the context of the vote that they took where the leadership okayed the deal in the first place, and then the rank and file voted it down.
Well, actually, the leadership never okayed the deal. They were like, all right, well, Biden has basically brokered this, and this is the best and final, and we hope that people approve it. But it wasn't like they came to an agreement with the bosses that then they put to their workers and said, this is a good agreement. It was kind of forced on the union leadership and on the workers.
Is there still hope that Biden might use that second option of an executive order amending Obama's 2015 executive order, which guaranteed 7 paid sick leave days for federal employees, if you're dealing with federal contracts, but specifically excluded rail workers in
Right.
that executive order. I mean, that's something if theoretically Biden could do unilaterally.
And it seems to me, and what I've been picking up is that is why they wanted to do this kind of week-long process of voting both in the House and the Senate for sick days to elevate the issue, so they could then push for the EO. Because if Biden was ready to do this already, he could have already done the executive order. He could have put it in. He could have put it into this tentative agreement. He didn't. So they felt like they needed more pressure and getting Republicans in the House and then these 6 Republicans over in the Senate and getting media attention. You got railway workers on CNN saying Biden sold us out. Like that's good stuff for them. Like that puts Biden in a corner that he wasn't really in before. And so a union source told me that this is their next phase, that they're pushing Biden to basically strip that exemption, because they are completely qualify for the sick day executive order that is already in place thanks to Obama. That's why Obama had to explicitly carve them out of it. Like that's how much love there is in the party for this precision thing.
Yeah. Was this this is the next phase, but were they planning this phase? I mean, is this why they were pushing for lawmakers to the leadership was pushing lawmakers to vote in this way so that they could vote, like they could set it up, 2 weeks ago? Was this their plan? Like, we're really going for the EO because we know that we can't get this vote in the Senate?
2 weeks might be a stretch. When did Biden first say he was going to force this on them?
Well, I guess it was only about a week ago, I feel.
Yeah. So, but I mean, they have definitely been eyeing this executive order. Like they're very well aware that they were carved out of this and that they want to get back in. They'd prefer to, get it into a contract language rather than an executive order that the next president, could undo. But yes, I don't have. I'm still doing some reporting on that. I don't have any like memos that prove it, but it does seem like there's a link between the strategy this week to have the votes with then putting pressure on Biden to do the executive order and getting bipartisan buy-in. Like it's really helpful to come, not just to come to like the courts, but to come to the White House and say, look, Ted Cruz is for this. What's wrong with you?
I mean, what's wrong with him? I mean, that's a legitimate question.
Yeah.
I mean, because also, there's some pretty bad politics associated with the White House for not seeing this come down the road. Because even now, if they ultimately do the EO, which good for the workers, but in terms of their politics, it seems like they miscalculated as to how big of a deal this would become.
Mm-hmm. I think there's a lot more respect and appreciation for workers and for organized labor today than there was, say, 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. Definitely 20 and 30 years ago. And I think politicians need to get their heads back to that space. Biden comes from a place where you made political bones by kind of attacking unions as corrupt, and it wasn't a winning issue the way it is, the way it's becoming now.
Well, but I mean, is there a sense from maybe the rail carriers that the executive order, if it does happen, is preferable to it being in the contract, because there's like a very good chance they could just drag it out in the courts and the right-wing Supreme Court can side with them?
Maybe, but they would also be pretty annoyed that they would have given up a whole bunch of concessions around salary and other benefits, and then also given up the sick days. Because if they were gonna negotiate and give up the sick days, they would then be like, okay, well, this 24% pay raise that we're offering, like, let's call that 12% if you want the sick days. Like, so if they wind up with all of the sweeteners and all of the salary increases, plus then having to give up the sick days, they'll probably be, won't be Warren Buffett's best day.
If I'm the union and I'm thinking, like, what do I want extant hanging out there that I think I can get the best chance of getting that sounds most sympathetic? It's going to be sick days, right? I mean, it just seems to be a slam dunk. I mean, but it's a risky strategy, I guess. I'm not suggesting that's what they did from the beginning, but
Right. And there did seem to be some like 2% hope that they could get Republican support. Like John Cornyn on Tuesday
Right.
said like that he was good, and he was very much open to the sick days. And he said, I think there's going to be robust support.
Well, he did
from
research
the
and found
Republican
out what
Party.
sick days meant in the interim.
Yes,
he
I
didn't
think
know what that meant.
I think his
He didn't know
research
it.
involved a call to the railway CEOs
Mhm.
and heard immediately. And then the next day he's like, yeah, actually not so sure about that. But you can imagine where the unions might think, okay, this is a super long shot, but it's actually within the realm of possibility because this new Republican Party keeps talking about how it's the party of the working class. And you've got John Cornyn saying he's maybe into it. And then you got Lindsey Graham and Ted Cruz and Hawley and Rounds and all. Hey, let's roll the dice.
So what do you think of the fact that there was only 8 or so Democrats who voted against this? Like, where is the squad and the Progressive Caucus? I mean, they end up eating, it seems to me, a lot of the political heat for this. And that strategy of the severed bill, I think, ended up cutting against them. They could have pushed, it seems to me, for one bill that goes to the Senate. All right, the Senate strips it out, sends it back to the House, then they can vote against it.
Yeah, they could have. And for them, I think that clearly would have worked out better for them. They're continuously getting marginalized and outmaneuvered. This whole thing is kind of a microcosm of the difficulties that they have, because on the one hand, they're only a handful of votes, yet they want to use what little public leverage they have in order to advance whatever priority they are within a bad hand. And this is a perfect example, because like the hand is awful. Like
right.
Biden is forcing this agreement onto the Congress, and then Pelosi is going to force a vote, and Pelosi has the votes. Like, so at that point, you're like, it's going to be something terrible.
There's no way really for them
in.
Is there really even an opportunity for them to shape what that initial bill was going to be, or was it just sort of like
that would have had to have been months and months ago if they wanted to. But that was really done between the White House and the unions and the companies. So once Biden puts it into Congress, then it either passes with them voting no, or they can try to add this sick leave thing, and they don't get much cover. Like the fact that the unions wanted this done doesn't give them cover in today's political environment, because there's so little trust that people are like, oh, so the unions wanted you to do this. Well, the unions they're just handmaids of the Democratic Party. Like the members didn't like this deal. They rejected this. So if it's not embraced by the rank and file, then what does it matter what the unions did? So then you're like, well, okay, what do you do? Do you tell the unions, look, not so sure that this is something that your members would actually support, so we're just gonna denounce this, and good luck getting an executive order, because it didn't seem like Pelosi was going to give on making it, allowing it to be amended.
Right.
So at that point, your choice is denounce it, vote it down, and then hopefully make as big a stink as you can, so that you get that momentum around the executive order, or you just leave it to Bernie. Like Bernie gets off scot-free on all of this stuff. It's wild. You just say, look, Bernie, you want to put them on the record, put them on the record, put the Senate Republicans on the record. We're not doing it over here.
Could they have voted? Could you vote to against the deal and then voted for the sick days? Could you make that vote? Could you have split those votes?
And honestly, that's what I would have done if I were there. You would have kind of been breaking your word a little bit to Pelosi, but Pelosi's a lame duck. So if you're gonna do it, like now's the time to do it. What's she gonna do at this point?
The agreement was, if you let us vote for the 7 days, sick days, we'll vote for the initial deal. I see.
Right. So then,
Yeah,
then
I
you
suppose you
watch
could have broken that
Then you watch
deal.
the votes, and you're like, look, you're like Nancy, you got 250. Like you're good. I'm voting no.
Right. And then you apologize later, I guess. Doesn't necessarily set you up to make a deal next time if you're going to lie now, but it would have
At least you
saved.
didn't lie to right. Well, but the new leader wants you dead, basically. So
Yeah.
like, what do you have to lose?
Right.
Okay. Well, let's move to the. Let's move to that question. There's two things I want to talk about.
Oh yeah, we know what you meant. For legal reasons,
right.
we understand.
Politically speaking.
Yeah.
Hakeem Jeffries, more hostile to progressives, more effectively hostile to progressives than Nancy Pelosi? That's a question.
More hostile, more overtly hostile, but maybe not more effectively hostile. We'll see. That's it. Because he like actually set up an entire PAC to raise money and go after progressives, and has worked hand in hand with AIPAC and DMFI to go after progressive candidates. Like Pelosi, for all of her kind of snide remarks that she makes about the squad, and for any criticisms she doesn't do that like that. And she actually like has she supported Ilhan Omar when Omar was facing a pretty close primary challenge this year. For instance, would Hakeem Jeffries have done that, or would Hakeem have actually thrown the weight of the party behind Omar's challenge, which could flip it for whatever normie voters in that district?
Well, he's
matter.
got to be in the top 10. What's the? I don't even know how percentiles work. So 90th percentile, right? 90th percentile of most rabidly pro-Israel Democrats in the House. I mean, in terms of like his connections with AIPAC, you hear some of his speeches. That's immensely concerning to me in how he, as likely the Democrats' leader in the House for decades at this point, will deal with BDS within his caucus, for example.
Yeah, and he also seems to buy into the kind of the strain of thinking that is endemic to AIPAC, for instance, that most progressives like Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, or even AOC or Cori Bush, Bowman, like that they are themselves anti-Semitic, that there's a link between progressivism of the Justice Democrat style and anti-Semitism. Like that, he seems to be somebody who kind of buys into that idea, which is again like a whole nother level beyond where Pelosi was in her relationship to the left.
I seem to remember the first couple of weeks of the Democrats taking the House and Ilhan Omar, them, Pelosi basically crawling over people to denounce Ilhan Omar and stepping all over their big rollout of HR 1. Maybe I guess it was in 2018.
Although Omar has talked about that since then, that seems to have been Pelosi just going along, and she called Omar a couple times during this to say like, look, I'm with you on this. We have to do this. We don't have a choice. Like she came out of it as an ally of Omar's in a weird way, whereas like Hoyer, who organizes a trip to Israel every 2 years for incoming freshmen and other people, and Jeffries and Gottheimer, Elaine Luria, were really like leading the charge on that. So it's a matter of degrees,
right?
But Hakeem Jeffries was a much higher degree of on the warpath in that period.
We're going to have plenty of time to talk about this in the future, but is there do you get a sense that anybody's sitting around going like, here's our strategy for Jeffries, like we got to get this guy out? Like, I mean, we should just say it seems ridiculous after having like Pelosi in there for what it was 15 years, essentially as the Democratic leader, maybe more, I guess. It was definitely more. It was at least 16 years, but maybe more. But we should also say that in that time, there's been 6, 7 Republican leaders
Right.
in the caucus. So it's not inconceivable. Democrats seem to have more of a tradition of people being in that position for a long, long time, but that's not necessarily written in stone. It's a different era, and I wonder. Maybe we'll talk about this another time because I want to get to this other story as to whether there's people have any type of strategy. As far as I could tell so far, though, the progressives in the House strategy does not seem to be like job number one. Quite yet. And I'm not sure exactly what job number one is, but it doesn't seem to be like, short or long-term strategy. I just want to touch on one more thing. Biden wants South Carolina to be the new, and it looks like it's going to happen. Iowa is going to get bumped out of first place in the caucuses. Without getting into sort of like the caucus primary sort of argument, the implications, it seems to me, of South Carolina being first, and then South Carolina would be first, then it would be Nevada, New Hampshire, Georgia, and then Michigan. That to me feels like you're going to get more conservative candidates, A, and B, the difference between a primary, I guess, and a caucus is that money plays a bigger role earlier in the primary. What's your take on this?
And are they talking about South Carolina being a primary or a caucus?
I think it's a primary.
The one upside I could see from that is that I think it would force the kind of Sanders wing to do better among older black voters, like that. Like their plan of winning Iowa, New Hampshire, Nevada, and then steamrolling from there. It's that plan where number 3 is like a question mark.
Yeah.
Turned out not. Yeah.
Right. It's too sexy of a potential option that seems to seduce progressives all the time and never works out for them.
Right. So, and look, there's a lot that progressives have to offer an older African American voting base. Like there's no reason they can't compete there, and particularly as the Congressional Black Caucus now is made up maybe 40-ish% by real younger progressive members of Congress, whereas 6-7 years ago it was almost 100% folks from the 80s and 90s who were in one party districts basically, and we're not really active in kind of a progressive coalition anymore. So to kind of force that question for progressive candidates and for the progressive movement, I think would be the one upside that could come out of that. At least Michigan they'd floated Michigan as going first.
Michigan is number 5. What they're talking about now is South Carolina, Nevada, New Hampshire, Georgia, and then Michigan. And so there is, Nevada is an interesting,
although Nevada's a caucus, I bet, New Hampshire's got that crazy law where they say that they want to be first, and so they'll keep jumping up. But the DNC could just ignore them on this law. But maybe they'll make South Carolina a caucus, and then also Nevada a caucus, and then New Hampshire is the first primary.
My sense is they want to get rid of caucuses.
Get rid of caucuses altogether.
That's my sense. But I guess
I mean, at least South Carolina is smaller. The problem with Michigan as a first state is it's so big,
right?
That you'd have to have either Bernie Sanders level name recognition or enormous amounts of money, that it's tough.
It seems to me this is going to start the primaries earlier, at least for
how could it start earlier? It's like already multi years.
We've got people already running for 2028 right now.
It's bizarre. I think they've just got to get rid of this like scheduled election thing, and just do it like Europe does.
Well, while we're there, let's just go with a parliamentary system and get rid of just 2 major parties.
Yeah. Yes. Totally. Yeah.
You're in
Also,
charge of all this.
the Senate
Yeah.
can become ornamental as well. That's what I would.
Yeah, they can still exist.
Yeah.
They can do
They just
sensible
rubber stamp
Senate
stuff.
resolutions. Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, if someone puts us in charge of this stuff, we can wrap this up, I think, in a weekend, and we'll take care of it. Ryan Grimm, always a pleasure. Great to see you so relaxed, comfortable, like this.
Exactly.
It's really nice.
Happy Friday.
Yeah, thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Thanks,
We'll put a
Ryan.
link, of course, to the Counterpoints and the Intercept. Is it called?
The Intercept.
Yes, I've heard that.
Intercept.com.
Really appreciate it. Thanks, man.
Yep. Talk to you later.
All right, folks. That concludes the. Well, we're going to go into the fun half.
Yeah.
We don't. Every Friday doesn't have to be a freebie Friday or an extra Friday.
Yeah, and we've been going long with the first hour
Oh my
for all
God, are
week.
you
So
kidding me? For
even yesterday we
months.
went long.
For months, we've been doing this.
Yes.
Years, really.
We're disciplining the audience now.
You make Milo a liar every time we go longer than 50 minutes on the fun half.
That's the thing, is that the show started off, it was supposed to be 45 minutes of the free half and 45 minutes of the fun half. And then talk about
Things have changed.
talk about
Inflation.
mission creep. Talk about mission creep. My
Sticking
God.
inflation.
Folks, it's your support that makes this show possible. You can become a member at jointhemajority.com. When you do, not only help this show survive and thrive, but you also get the free half free of commercials, and you get the fun half. And you get to IM me and Emma on the, and really, I guess, Matt and Bradley.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they can see it too. On our app, which is totally free, but the IM feature unlocks if you're a member. It's a value add.
Yes.
Is what we call it in the business. You can pick up the app at majorityapp.com. Even if you're not a member, the app is great. It gives you links to everything. It allows you to play the show live as an audio stream or a video stream. And it will be also on Android, or the updated app. It exists now, but the updated one is coming out soon. So check it out. And don't forget, justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, tea, or chocolate. Use the coupon code majority, get 10% off. Send us your ideas for the best ofs. MajorityReporters@gmail.com. Put in the subject line best of, and then name that episode. If you can do a number or a date, that is a big help to us. Emma, Pat's lost last night.
Yeah.
I even forgot. I was like all excited to watch the game. And I got caught up in writing. I'm writing a recommendation for Milo School, which is a weird
Oh.
thing to do, like a parent recommendation.
I didn't for college?
Yeah, there was one you could do it. I mean, it's not. I'm not pretending to be somebody else, but
that is just like I
And
feel
it-
like the list of requirements for these colleges just keeps growing.
it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But it's also tricky to do because you don't like, my daughter's great, And
Yeah.
so I spent a long time to do it, and a friend helped me out, gave me some notes on it, and I'm working on it. I said, I got to crank this thing out. And then I realized, oh, crap, I missed the game. And then I looked at the score, and I'm like, oh, crap, they lost.
Yeah, you didn't miss much. The Patriots' offense is broken right now, I think, from a schematic perspective.
I was going to
and
say that, too.
It's less, I would say,
Schematically.
on Mac Jones and the players, but maybe an outdated philosophy in the fact that Belichick has decided to put a special teams coordinator and a defensive head coach at the head of the offense. It's a bit of arrogance on his part, and I'm usually a Belichick defender. But on ESPN, Bradley and I gave our picks against the spread for the weekend. Bradley's gone 0-6 since he picked the Jets against the Patriots. We said it would be a mush at the time, and it has been. That means I'm back in this thing, baby. So I'm feeling myself confident about my picks this weekend. We shall see how it works out. But we also did talk about a little bit more about the benching of Zach Wilson, because the more I sit with it, the more I have an unpopular opinion about that decision. So check that out.
I was talking with my friends last night. They agreed.
Look, the agenda's growing.
The agenda's growing. Yeah.
The Sala was unfair. Anyway.
Matt Leck Media Enterprises this week features what, Matt?
This week we had Sam Goodman of La Ruta da Clima on, talk about COP27, and we bitched about Joe Biden on the rail workers. This weekend, another essay in our reading series, this time another Hal Draper essay. We recently did his Anatomy of a Microsect essay, which a lot of people are saying really helped them understand the different sort of anxieties and schismism that comes from organizing and being in left spaces. So check that out. Patreon.com.
Wait, who'd you do that with?
Griscom and I did one on Hal Draper. You familiar with Hal Draper?
No.
It's a socialist writer that I actually wasn't familiar with from like the 70s and 80s.
Oh, interesting. All right, folks, 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
You are in for it.
All right, folks, 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
Are you ready?